Hello, welcome back to my channel and to another reaction video. This time we continue in the Halo universe. This is the Flood.
No civilization that grows beneath a veil of stars can resist assigning some sort of meaning to them. When humanity first escaped the confines of Earth and began exploring the universe, they brought with them, like so many others before, an earnest hope that some grand understanding or purpose might be found in the darkness. But the galaxy raised only more questions, the greatest of which came from the ruins of a species that would come to be known as the Forerunners. How a race of such sophistication and power could disappear in an instant, and the purpose of the mysterious relics they left behind.
Yeah, in the previous video they mentioned how the Halos were constructed specifically to destroy the Flood.
Than this question, for it came in the form of the Flood.
Ooh, and there's Master Chief. Ooh.
Parasitic, invasive, and extraordinarily adaptable, the multitude of life forms and mutations that constitute the Flood have no equal in the natural world.
Kind of reminds me of
they are an aberration in the study of biology and are incompatible with every natural ecosystem. Yet, despite their grotesque appearance and typically wild behavior, as an outbreak spreads, the Flood have the potential to become a self-aware and highly intelligent entity, matching or surpassing any civilization in galactic history. They are an almost perfect life form, but one that can only persist through the extermination of all others. In their most basic form, the Flood exists as a minuscule airborne particulate known as flood spores. Their only purpose is the infection of other forms of life through a unique Flood supercell. These supercells coordinate cellular assembly, but are also capable of acting in conjunction with one another, creating or mimicking any bodily organ as required, resulting in a kind of thinking muscle.
Cool.
When these spores are inhaled, come into contact with an open wound, or through some other method enter into a living or recently deceased organism, supercells are released and act as catalysts for a rapid transformation. The Flood spore hijacks the body and nervous system of an infected host, breaking down their cells into a raw organic material which can then be assimilated. As this process accelerates, more supercells are created, and an organism's compounds are repurposed. Calcium, in particular, is used to create the framework of a new Flood life form, to which biomatter is then grafted. The host's brain is kept chemically isolated throughout the process, ensuring no signals can interrupt it. Depending on the complexity of the life form, this intricate, multi-stage transformation can take only seconds. The earliest Flood life forms created by their spores are generally grouped into a category of infection forms. While exponentially more complex, these parasites have a similar purpose, seeking out new life in which to spread Flood supercells. Unlike the largely passive spores, these parasites actively seek out new hosts. They can take different forms, each uniquely suited to a different environment, but the most prevalent are pod infectors. These are far more effective than spores alone, and the primary vector of a Flood infection. Small in size and resembling balloon-like creatures, pod infectors overwhelm larger and stronger organisms through sheer numbers. With numerous grasping tentacles, they can chip away at armor, clothing, and flesh before probing into the victim's nervous system, typically through the chest. Once Flood supercells are released, the transformation repeats itself. Even brief contact with a pod infector can be fatal. Once a supercell has been released, there is no reliable means of slowing its progression.
That's one of the prophets.
Only in exceedingly rare cases, when an infectopod has been wounded or significantly aged, has the host body survived the process, but is still only able to exert control over their own body during brief, random moments. Organisms successfully afflicted by pod infectors might be turned into pod infectors themselves, but often the infection will instead begin creating new forms of Flood life.
That's so cool.
Organisms might be turned into any number of combat forms, and tasked with further spreading and defending the Flood infection. Rather than completely overwhelming the host, the parasitic growth lodges itself somewhere on the body, and begins growing new limbs and appendages which extrude outwards, seemingly randomly. certain organs are preserved or recreated, allowing the body to remain functional. The overall physical appearance and behavior of these combat forms varies drastically, depending on the species originally infected. Eventually, Flood supercells will completely overwhelm a combat form, and its usefulness in this role will be severely impaired. When this occurs, the parasite will begin spontaneously generating new pod infectors within the host body. This causes the organism to swell to grotesque proportions, with any appendages and limbs reduced to flailing stumps. These carrier forms act as mobile incubators, producing pod infectors indefinitely. When potential new hosts are present in its immediate vicinity, however, it will attempt to move towards them, before detonating itself in a biological explosion, similar to that of a fragmentation grenade. Clouds of flood spores are released, and the infection is allowed to spread further. As with infection forms, carrier forms can be very different in appearance and capability, depending on the local environment and native species present. During the earliest phase of a flood outbreak, when only small groups of individuals have been assimilated, infection, combat, and carrier forms will act in an animalistic and senseless manner. During this feral stage, their overriding instinct will be to spread the infection, but without any strategy or higher order thinking. Despite their rudimentary behavior, by some kind of instinct, even the most basic form of the flood will prioritize more intelligent species for assimilation. In one of the least understood aspects of their propagation, parasitic life forms can retain the intelligence and memories of their host. These are then shared across every flood organism, collectively forming a nascent hive intelligence, a critical component of the infection's development. This single consciousness grows more sophisticated as the outbreak spreads. Combat forms will begin to reliably use weapons and tools with which they were familiar in life, and even begin to operate complex machinery. Infection forms become able to coordinate their activities to rapidly acquire biomass from sentient life forms. At every level, flood life forms will exhibit a greater ability to solve problems and react to outside interference. At an indeterminate moment, this consciousness will reach a tipping point, and the flood will begin to enter into a new, coordinated stage. From enormous amounts of raw biomass, a physical embodiment of the supreme flood intelligence is crafted, a Gravemind. The Gravemind is the highest stage of the flood's biological development, directing the outbreak as a whole to perform intricate tasks and enact complex strategic thinking.
Cool. They showed that.
Through the absorption of countless memories,
in
it
the
possess an extraordinary
Covenant video.
awareness
That
of
was
entire species and attempt to
so
manipulate
cool.
or deceive them
I mean,
in
terrifying,
subtle
but
or
cool.
overt ways. To coordinate its growing capabilities, a Gravemind will begin producing key minds, specialized forms that amplify the effectiveness of the shared consciousness. The most common key mind is known colloquially as abominations and drastically improves the abilities of nearby flood organisms. The Gravemind will additionally attempt to replicate itself, creating additional proto-Graveminds. These have the potential to grow into fully formed Graveminds themselves, but no matter how many there are, they are merely representations of a single shared intelligence. The capability and capacity of that intelligence will depend heavily on how many key minds it controls. Once a Gravemind has asserted itself over the flood, and the coordinated stage of the outbreak is well underway, a new evolution will occur. The most advanced category of flood creations, beneath only the key minds, are designated pure forms. Unlike every other flood organism, these are not created through the infection of alien hosts, but rather crafted from raw biomass. Without the restrictions of a host's body, these can take any number of subforms, usually adapting to directly counter threats to the greater outbreak. In the feral stage, and even during the subsequent coordinated stage, a flood outbreak might be misidentified as a natural phenomenon or a mindless rampaging infection. A Gravemind might even actively work to encourage this perception. But the full extent of the flood's character becomes truly evident when it acquires the ability to conduct interstellar travel. This capability is based on the kind of civilization the flood has infected, and is not a component of its innate biological development. Nevertheless, by commandeering spacecraft, the flood can enter an interstellar stage, infecting entire worlds and star systems. One of its most
I can see
notable
why
abilities at this stage
the
is the logic
Forerunners
plague, an
needed to
abstract flood
destroy this
infection
thing.
carried not through biological means, but rather by transmitted data and artificial intelligences. Through this still, largely mysterious process, the Flood can begin to directly operate technology, often to a superior degree when compared to its original operators, thanks to the Gravemind's immense base of knowledge. The earliest information on the Flood comes from the Forerunners, which hint that they are all that remains of an even more ancient civilization. What is undeniable is that the Forerunners fought an apocalyptic war against the Flood, in which the power of the hive mind grew exponentially. Entire worlds were transformed into key minds, and the resulting logic plague infected every Forerunner system and network. With every other method of containing the Flood ineffective, the Forerunners resorted to a brilliant, yet completely Pyrrhic solution. Rather than attempt to destroy the Flood themselves, the Forerunners rid the galaxy of their food source, stripping them of any future hosts and their ability to spread. Through the activation of 7 ring-shaped megastructures referred to as the Halo Array, the galaxy was purged of all sentient life. The Forerunners themselves were erased from existence, their last survivors fleeing the galaxy to seek refuge elsewhere. Pre-sapient life, carefully conserved on a massive ark, was introduced to their native environments, now free from the threat of infection. The war fought between the United Nations Space Command and the theocratic alliance known as the Covenant unleashed the threat of the Flood millennia after their supposed extinction. Specimens had been preserved through certain Forerunner installations, and the resulting infection grew to substantial size, even forming a Gravemind, before it was eventually destroyed. But while the Gestalt consciousness is gone, sporadic Flood lifeforms remain, locked away in the forgotten corners of the fallen Forerunner civilization. A single spore can devastate an entire civilization, and with the Covenant shattered and the UNSC in chaos, there has never been a better opportunity for an outbreak to go unnoticed. A timeless chorus may yet arise again, one that joins every voice of the galaxy together to sing victory everlasting. A universe of corpses sharing one grave.
Okay. Well, there you have it, folks. That was the Flood from the Halo universe, and yeah, that's a a scary thing to face. I believe this is what's considered to be the final enemy in the Halo universe. I mean, there are others, but I mean mostly the Covenant. But the Flood is the truest and the worst threat to the galaxy. And yeah, it very much reminds me of the Thing or Parasite Eve, the way it behaves. But yeah, well, it was an interesting fact, knowing all the stages of infection, that a small amount of Flood infected will behave like feral animals, just attacking, spreading infection. But as it grows and harvests more biomass and information through all the brains of the hosts, it absorbs, it becomes more and more intelligent. And yeah, that Gravemind thing, that was terrifying, but I do love the design. That was awesome at the same time. And yeah, they are able to, infect a ship and through that way gain access to interstellar travel, but they can't, it's not in their own evolution to develop things, I guess. So that's an interesting fact, but a lot of good does it do. I mean, the Forerunners found a way to, eradicate their food supply and rid the galaxy of all life, only to, wow, what was it? Some kind of ark thing. Noah's Ark bring life to the galaxy. I mean, desperate measures, but they did mention that some Forerunners escaped the galaxy, so they are very much a thing. definitely check out that video next. See, are they an ally or an enemy after millennia of Excel or whatever. But yeah, I remember in the Covenant video they mentioned how they accidentally released the Flood. It was Halo or one Halo. They didn't mention that how they had the Forerunners had samples in store. Like, why the hell would they have that? I don't know. And yeah, they did mention that there are Forerunner civilizations here and there, and a single spore can take down a civilization. So I'd imagine it would be very hard to eradicate completely, but yeah, don't store them into places where would attract people. I mean, the Halos are holy relics to the Covenant, so there are a lot of people, folks in the galaxy looking for the Halos. So I don't know. Maybe there's more to it than that. As I said, I have not checked the Forerunners video, so maybe there's more info exactly why they did what they did. But yeah, I have played some of the games, but I never really paid attention to the actual story. I usually just shot anything that got in the way. I have never owned a Halo game. I've usually played with friends or in a store or something like that. So, but yeah, no. I have to admit the story is very fascinating. And I know that the TV show kind of split the fandom. Some people hated it, some people liked it. People who haven't played the game liked it more than people who had played. So who knows? I might check that show out. But yeah, what else? What else? I don't know. I'm talking too long. Hope you enjoyed my reaction. Drop a comment, like, subscribe if you want, and I will see you in another video.